Cadence.
Good morning and welcome to the Rugby Scoop podcast. Today is the breakfast scoop. It's no longer lunchtime scoop. Yeah, we're recording quite early this morning on Sunday, but nonetheless, I'm with Jade, I'm with Vickers. Vickers back from his sabbatical or week off. A lot of rugby to talk about. Last week, we were looking at a sweep from the South African teams. This week, only the Blue Bulls are the only team so far. Because later on, there's a game between the Dragons and the Lions. Stormers going under in Edinburgh. Sharks pummeled by Benetton. I don't know what's going on with the Sharks. But we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to get into the detail. Hopefully the Lions, hopefully the Joburg side can stand up for the South African teams later on this afternoon at 3:30 against the Dragons. But anyway, welcome everybody to another episode of the Rugby Scoop podcast. My name is Pila, by the way. With Vuyo Zanga, former Springbok Blitzbokker. I'm with Jade Craig, the weatherman. I'm not going to talk about the weather. But Vickers, how's your weekend been? How are you doing?
Yeah, good, brother. Nothing much on my side, just recovering after last weekend. Yeah.
All right, Jade, how things there in Bloemfontein? Hoe gaan dit?
It's good, bro. It's all good. Recovering from this heat of the weekend, but yeah, it's good.
What is this heat of the weekend business that's happening there?
No, don't worry about it. It's a rugby podcast.
Too many clippies there by Makufe.
Yeah. We don't drink clippies at Makufe, brother.
No, fair enough. But looking at the results from the weekend so far, like I said earlier, there's the Lions and the Dragons later at 3:30, but the Warriors in URC, obviously, the Warriors beating Zebra 33-3, Scarlets beating Cardiff 25-19, Benetton beating the Sharks 38-10, Edinburgh beating Stormers 38-7. Oof. That's a tough one. I thought the Stormers would gain some momentum from last week's win. But nonetheless, Leinster, too strong for Munster over the weekend, 26-12 in that game. Blue Bulls, 13-man Blue Bulls, too strong for Ospreys, 29-19. Ulster, 32-27. But we're also going to later on touch on a bit of the NPC and looking at the Allblacks squad going into the end of the year tour. But nonetheless, so we're going to kick it off. Vickers, let's maybe kick it off with the Sharks over the weekend. Not convincing from the Sharks. Last week, they came close against the not too bad Dragon side. But regardless of that, the Sharks couldn't keep the momentum or the winning momentum last night against a very strong Benetton side.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I did notice with the Sharks is that they start their games very slowly. They tend to need time to get into their games, and then also what I picked up is they made a lot of errors. There's a lot of it feels like there's a lot of errors, uncertainty on. It's almost like when we discussed this last season. It's almost like we're back there again, which is I'm not sure how can we be back there after they won obviously some quite important trophies for themselves? So yeah, I think for me, there was the disconnect again between the forwards and the backs, and also stuck, like we discussed, stuck between, are you guys gonna play a kicking game? Are you gonna play a running game? Are you gonna play like what kind of structure are you gonna have? So I think for me, that's why it feels like there's a lot of uncertainty with even Jordan at 15. Is he gonna be a running fullback? Is he going to be a kicking the ball back? Let's gain some territory back. So yeah, it's at the moment it does feel like that, and I think that's why the inconsistency in results.
Yeah, Jade, your thoughts?
Yeah, we're back on the Sharks again. Inconsistent. So, I mean, last week, we can all be honest with it. Last week, the matter of like I asked the question last week. Did they get out of jail, or did they underperform when we did look at that result last week against the Dragons? But yeah, we're back on them again. We're again asking questions, again question marks around Plummy and his tactics and his attitude. Because for me, the squad is out of all those African squads. The Sharks look like they have the best team on paper. Maybe the Bulls have something to say about it, but I don't know. I still don't know. Even throughout the Currie Cup as well, they've been up and down, up and down. They won the competition, but if you look at their results, um, they had a few upsets along the way, and that's what you're getting with the Sharks. We know they're going to be consistent. We know that because this team, beside Bar, maybe Jaden Hendrickse, he's maybe one that came in, but Jordan Hendrickse, Masuku, Estreisen, Juries, all of those guys, and in the forwards as well. They've been playing for a while together now. So they've had about 6 or 7 games that they've been playing together, the core team. So they've been working towards something, but I still haven't seen, what's their game plan? We asked this question last year, what is their game plan? What are they going to do? It's like they're caught in two minds again. Should they spread it? Should they razzle-dazzle? Should they just take it right up front? Should they go back to them all? But yeah, for me, there's so much questions regarding the Sharks. I don't know. I think they need one massive performance against the Leinster or the Bulls, or I can't even say the Stormers because they're not what they used to be. But they need one big performance so that we can see what they're all about. But they're so inconsistent. We're asking this question every week on the pod in terms of what is the Sharks and where to. So Plumtree is the one for me. Everything's directed at him.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But Vickers, we're talking consistency, we're talking game shape or some detail within the Sharks' identity. Last season, we spoke about the Sharks, about almost similar things that we're currently touching on today. But from your side or your perspective as a coach, right, you want to win 3 in a row, 4 in a row, 5 in a row. Maybe there will be that odd performance where things don't look like they're going your way, but sometimes you just want that consistency, and obviously you want to see game shape, the pattern that you've practiced all week being used in the particular game, right? And not changing too much. But with the Sharks, we can never understand what game plan they have. One weekend they're using, like Jade said, they're using a lot of forward strength and they build momentum from that. The next weekend they want to run from everywhere. For example, the mistake that happened in the game in that first half against the Benetton side, where I think Esther Hazen threw the ball in or something. It was a quick throw in. Those things like that, coach killers. How can a coach build momentum or winning momentum for his side? What are maybe some of the things that the Sharks aren't doing in the coaching staff? And then what do you see from the players element? Because there were some defensive errors as well. Because, it seemed like Benetton were just there running. Yeah, the gaps were opened. There wasn't a lot of structure on defense. A lot of soft touches from Benetton and also that fullback from the Cheetahs. What is his name again? Is it Ryan Smith or something?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a coach, what can you do to get that consistency and also to try and get the team performing week in, week out? Because these guys have been together for some time now. We can't say this is a new team. They're trying to find their shape. Plumtree has spoken about that previously, where he said, "I'm still new. I don't understand some of the guys." Now he does understand the team that he has. He understands the players that he has. What is the issue?
Look, I think we have to start with the team culture. I think that's the most important. I think the team culture, you have to start with what kind of players do you have in your system. I always believe if you as a coaching team and the union you have to have your own style of play. Now, if we look at the players in terms of the Sharks, there is so many mixed players, if I can call it like that. Look at the centers. You've got a powering center like Andre Esterhuizen. Then you have sort of like your mover, which is fainter. Then you have your Julius, which is you're also your mover. Then you have maybe Ethan Hooker, who's also direct. So it's almost like for me, they 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 don't have their DNA. I don't know if you can hear that scoop, but and same with the fly half. Same with the fly half. If you look at Masuku, we know Masuku can play. He can play a kicking game. He can play a running game. Then you have a player like Lionel Cronia, who is obviously also a very experienced guy, but who also has that element of let's play by how it feels. So I think that's where maybe they need to start looking at and building their own DNA. We know they have a very good scrum. They have powerful forwards. Are they going to use their forwards or are they going to use their backs? Because also their backs are quite very good backs. So that's where I think they need to start. And I think the more the players can start to understand what is required from them by the coaching staff, then you start to build consistency because then you can hold players accountable for consistency. So yeah, I think those are the small things that you can change. Those are the small things. That's just my opinion though. But those are the small things that you can start with. Start to build a DNA. How are we going to play? Are we going to play a game where we playing 12-man rugby because we have the 12 that's strong. So if you're not gonna use the 12-man rugby, then you better make sure that your centers are more than capable to let the ball go. So I think those are the kind of changes that they need to start looking at. Build a DNA where they want to play, how they want to play, and they start signing players that will fit into that. Then you'll start to build consistency.
Yeah, signing players. I mean, they've been signing players. The Sharks, Jade. Looking at DNA, Jade, within the Sharks, like Vio said, they do have a very strong 12. Do you think John Plumtree is moving away from a South African DNA, that type of play with the Sharks? And maybe that's why there's a bit of inconsistencies. I mean, we've seen John Plumtree has been in South Africa for very long time. And when he first came through the scene, he did quite well, but over time, he kind of lost the plot. But we haven't seen the old school John Plumtree where the Sharks were razzle dazzling and they were winning everything. They were consistent under him in that period. But now it doesn't seem like he has that ability again. And also, it doesn't feel like he's playing a more structured game, like Vio said, in terms of that maybe just stick with the South African DNA type of play. Why can't he do that?
Okay, you got to break it down and look at, John Plumtree. Like, if you look at the previous era and what was his game plan when he was at the Sharks and what he had. He had a very physical tight five. I mean, he had Duplessis and, the Duplessis brothers and Beast and all of those guys there. And then he had very, very good loosies, one big carrier always, but then he had likes of Konkowski and I think it was Keegan Daniels who were mobile, all over the place, link players. And then he had a structure, a fly off, in Pat Lambie and, he dictated the game and his backs could razzle-dazzle, his backs were at flair. So looking at what he has, he based his game off a strong tight five, and that's where he got the audios to allow his backs to, to razzle dazzle. That was his game plan, and that's what he did. When you look at him when he won this, I thought, or when he was involved with the Hurricanes as well, that was more similar to what the Hurricanes did as well. The front, they tight five, back got the audios, but they had Lucy's, that was mobile, could get out of the place. So for me, that's what he's more all about, blocking the audio out up front and then getting your Lucy's, link up and then getting your backs to get forward. So I think Plumtree didn't evolve his game too much to what he has. Like the Sharks, but the biggest problem they have with the Sharks, when they're signing players, they do not sign to the overall big rugby plan or the big overall plan that Plumtree or those guys they have as to where we want the Sharks to be in 3 or 4 years' time. We want them to play the specific pattern. We want them to do this or that. So, but now, every old player that's available, you'll see them going off then, an ex-pro coming back. I mean, we've seen Sia coming back now. We've seen Trevor, Andre Esterhuizen. But are those signings a part of where they want to be and what is their long-term plan? So they need to identify what is their long-term plan. Because John Plummer is involved in that long-term plan, how is he going to evolve his game? What kind of game do you want to play? Do you want to go back to having that tight five? Do we have the tight five? Yes, we have it. Do we have the Lucy's? No. Now we need to look at, getting Lucy's a little bit more mobile, getting one strong ball carrying Lucy, and then taking the back from there. But you can't just sign any old player that's available from Europe and expect him to fit into your system. Yes, there are players that's adaptable, but there's some players that, they have ceilings. And I mean, for example, he's signing maybe Andre Esterhuizen was brilliant at Harlequins, but I mean, he's been underperforming a little bit at the Sharks this season. But is he the kind of center, the real center, like Vio said, that you want at the Sharks, I said last year, I said it, they're signing Andre Esterhuizen, but they got a gem in Ethan Hooker that, they might not just even look at playing at center. So, all of the stuff they need to look at. Look at your players we're bringing in. Look at your plan. What is your plan? Don't just sign players because they're available. And I feel that is what the Sharks have done this last few years. They're just signing any old player that's available because of name and because of getting them into the brand. The planning hasn't been that good this last few years.
Sure, because
no, just touch on the last part that Jade spoke about. With the Sharks, I think Andre Esterhuizen was at the Sharks straight after school, and the question that they would have asked themselves, why did he leave? Was it because of the coaches? Was it because I think he moved, if I'm not mistaken, I think he moved in 2013 or 2014 to the Sharks. So I'm not sure if John was still there then, but yeah, I think those are the questions. Why did he leave? And then secondly, when we're talking about the previous era with the current era, we have to look at also who was John's assistant. So like, for example, I think Bashford was one of the assistants. I think even Sean Everett was one of the assistants, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember who was who was doing forwards. Then, and you look at the current coaching group now, okay, so he's the one, obviously, he was there, and none of those guys now are there. And it's all young guys. Warren Whiteley, Joey Mangalo, you got JP Peterson there, you got Razim Volvo getting involved, you got Luseseni there. So you have to look at this. What kind of coaching group does he have now? You have Dave Williams as well. So what kind of coaching group does he have now? Maybe the current coaching group doesn't really understand exactly how they can they can build that culture, that DNA, because obviously the experience. But I think a lot of it has to start with, let's look at what we have in the system. What are we trying to do? And then he must take. It's almost like this one needs him to take control, and almost even if it means being that hard person, making sure that things are done properly, so that you start building that consistency, even from coaches, even from training. That's where I think they should start looking at.
Yeah, there's plenty of, obviously we can go on and on about the Sharks in this current form that they're on, the inconsistencies within their team or the squad and the coaching group as well. But there's also another team, a team from the Western Cape, who also can't seem to be consistent as well. Last week, and I don't know, a 10 out of 10 performance. And then a week later, they're losing to a team that copped 40 points in the first half last week against the Lions, Sean Everett's Edinburgh. So in my mind, I'm trying to understand how the Stormers actually lost to this team. So 7 days is a long time in rugby, clearly, because anything can happen within 7 days, and a team that can cop 40 points in the first half can go on and win convincingly. Obviously, there were too many errors within the Stormers element. But Jade, what happened to the Stormers?
Now, I mean, we spoke about it last week, and I mean, you've mentioned it a lot. I mean, you, Griffin, he's mentioned it a lot on the pod. Is the Stormers team still? You know, if you're looking at what the way the other teams have went, look at the Lions, for example. They keep on involving that squad with what they have, but they keep on playing better. They're getting better and better and better. The Stormers, for me, you know, we said it a few times that they have individual players that got them out of jail a few times. Is the Stormers team up to scratch? You know, he did John Dobson, you know, maybe run his race as a coach. I mean, did he hit his ceiling? Was it maybe he have left, you know, on a high because, you know, these results might tarnish your reputation. Personally, I don't see Stormers making a top 8 this season. I know Stormers guys will come at me for this, but I can't see them making a top 8 this season. I think there's other teams that's better than them, have more depth than them, have more better players than them. So for me, I really think, you know, it's maybe the atmosphere has gotten a little bit stale for these players. I think they maybe should have gotten a few more players in, but obviously they do not have the financial muscle that the Bulls and the Sharks do have. But I still think that, you know, the Stormers, for me, they've looked a little bit stale at the moment. From where they were 2 years ago, where they made the final back-to-back, to where they are now, I think they regressed. I think there's a few players they lost a few players, but they've gained a few players back. But I think, you know, the players hasn't gotten, I mean, they've reached the ceiling. So for me, I think, you know, maybe that whole setup there, maybe they just need to change a few fresh faces, like playing personnel and coaching personnel for them to change. But this season, I think they're going to struggle. I think they're a little bit stale, the Stormers this season.
Yeah, I mean, Vickers, we saw Damian Willemse going back to his original position as well, playing at 10. I mean, what do you make of that positional switch for Willemse? But also, I mean, what do you make of the Stormers as well? Because I think it's a similar conversation that we just had about the Sharks. Inconsistencies there. Are we able to travel well? Because last week it seemed like South African teams are able to travel well, but a week later things are totally or completely different. Because that was a strong Stormers side that was put out there in against Edinburgh. Most of those guys have played in the playoffs as well. Majority of them have played in that first final where they won when they won. So there's no excuse in terms of having seniority, having the experience. The only thing is, why can't they go over the line? Because now, I mean, they've got very solid players, man. What's the issue with the Stormers?
Scoop, I'm gonna touch on that quickly, but answer me this question: what is the Stormers' game plan?
Yes, we've spoken about their unstructured way, their unorthodox way of doing things. No game shape, no patterns. Play to what you see and hope for the best, I guess. But they still have the experience because they still have the players that have been there and done it. So they should be able to actually win away from home on the road. No?
Look, okay, I'm gonna make a nice example here. I think when we talk about game plan, when we talk about structure, it's what you call home, right? So if your structure is your home, and you start going outside and you start going to everywhere, you start to party or do whatever, and things are not going well, you can go back home and restart again. Whereas now we have a problem here with the team where they are used to throwing the ball around and being creating those. I mean, we saw even Warren Gelan's kick yesterday altered into a try just because of a bad pass. So that's the thing. That is the structure. But if those opportunities are not there, then what else are you falling back to? Where else are you going? So for me, I've always had the concern that I enjoy their style of play because they're doing what you call off the cuff stuff. But I've always had wondered, when is it gonna come a time this will end? Because teams will start picking up on it, and teams will start making sure that they don't give you those scraps. The teams are gonna kick better. So for me, that's one of the things that I think is a problem there, is that they've been figured out, but now the question comes in: what's next? What can they do next? I mean, yes, Damon Willemse, you could see yesterday he was a little bit rusty, had a few errors. I think also they're one of those teams that they need to start selecting the players in the right positions. So, for example, a guy you play Damon Williams, the fullback this week. Next week is playing 10. The following week he's going to play 12, and then you get this is your captain this week, Dan du Plessis. Next week it's someone else who's captain. Then look, I think the only positions that are settled at the Stormers is probably your 9 and your two wingers. I mean, Zas and Angelo Davis, they're the ones who probably starting most of the game. So I think they need to just create that continuity within their selection, and then obviously I think they still need to go back to the drawing board, and that's all Dobbo's job. Dobbo just need to go back and come up with a structure with Rito and the coaching staff with Snyman, and just like they must just come up with the structure that will start to follow, and then use the razzle dazzle for sure when it suits them, when the game is open, but definitely not to, especially going up north, especially going up. I mean, the weather in January is still coming. The weather in January, February is still gonna come. So we all know how it gets here. So they need to just go back to the drawing board, start building a even if it's a forward dominated game, so that they can then free up their backs if the game goes loose.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Because also just to remind the listeners as well, that the Stormers are sitting in 14th position, guys, 16th now, right at the bottom of the championship log. The Stormers with only one win this season so far. Sharks 1 win, sitting at 14. And only South African team in the top 3, in the top 4 is the Blue Bulls. Lions are sitting at 7th. 2 weeks back, we spoke about what we thought, or where we thought most of these teams are going to finish. But the Stormers are not looking great at this point, to be honest. And hopefully, going forward, they'll actually, get some W's at home. But on the road, it seems to be quite tough. Because I wanted to actually continue with that particular topic before we jump on to the next topic. The weather conditions and the change of weather, because I understand now, obviously, in South Africa, we're heading into heat and a lot of summer. And then the traveling to the likes of Ireland, Scotland, Italy, it's freezing over here. So traveling up north, change of conditions. But I know it's still early. We've been part of this URC competition now for what, 3-4 years. So do you think players get accustomed to it eventually? Because you were also coaching with the Kings during Pro 14. Do the players actually kind of get used to the conditions and adapt to the weather conditions up north?
No chance, mate. No chance. I think that, look, what I've noticed is that players are okay, especially during trainings. They're okay during, obviously, their time within that city. They're okay. It's when you have to wear shorts, your rugby jersey to go into that kind of cold. I think our players will never get used to it. I unfortunately, it's almost like you have to live every single day here to understand it. Even my players now in October, uh, my degrees are like around about between 6 and 10, and most of my trainings they're not enjoyable because it's almost like coach, just make us run, and then we finish with training, instead of having to play, having to coach them structure, having to try and make them understand what mistakes are they making, because that means that if I talk, they stop. Their hand starts getting freezing. So I honestly don't think South African players will ever get used to it. It's just a matter of toughen up and accept it. This is what it is. This is why it's a high performance sport. So yeah, I don't think so. And just Mpumelelo, that I was actually thinking of exactly the same question you pose now. How can a fullback have more carries than a 12? That's exactly what I was thinking, because you couldn't see Andre yesterday. Totally, you couldn't see him.
All right, fair enough. That brings us to an end for this particular segment. Obviously, in the news coming this past week as well, provincial rugby unions in South Africa, that is, in line for a cash boost if South Africa or South African rugby accepts the 1.3 billion American equity deal. Jade, we understand New Zealand had something similar to this effect, and I wanted to see how comparable these situations are, and also understanding the fact that it seems like American equity companies are looking for teams that have won back-to-back World Cups. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, looking at this particular possibility for a South African perspective, and how much of a boost this will be, because I believe that all unions, I think there's 16 or 14 of them in South Africa, will take part in the voting of this particular aspect. And obviously there's an element of them gaining some financial injection within all the South African provinces across the country. What are your thoughts with regards to the deal first for South African rugby? And obviously, if we compare it with what has happened in New Zealand, is it a positive, or it also has its glitches within this particular aspect?
Oh, no, they always have mixed opinions in terms of this, because if you look at it, the selling, like I do remember when Silver Lake came in and approached this to the All Blacks, tried to do it the first time. I got delayed because there was quick pushback from New Zealand rugby and from the old players, in terms of selling the brand. I mean, the brands have its history, over 100 years old. What selling, basically selling a stake, New Zealand rugby, to Silver Lake. And the same thing, as my same opinions could be with South African and the old players as well. Maybe they're feeling the same, selling the pop brand, selling it on. But then you also look at the commercial aspect of it in terms of business. I mean, where you're going to get this money from, how you're going to generate 1.2 billion, if that's the amount. I think it's 1.2 billion, right, Scoop, in the next few years. How long are you going to take before you're going to generate this? What aid can this money do in terms of African rugby for grassroots? We have provincial unions that are struggling. You look at even within the Currie Cup itself, the Cheetahs, the Griquas, the Pumas, and then you go out to the B division, you look at Border, EP. Those guys are struggling at grassroots level. So what benefit does this have towards them? How much of the money are they going to get? How much money are we going to put back into grassroots? Just remember, grassroots is not great college versus office. That's not your grassroots. Your grassroots is below that, looking at club rugby, looking at your communities, looking at getting facilities to getting more Mapimpis and Siakulisis out there as well. And also your Otwacha Smiths, they come from nowhere. So that is what you're looking at. And with the female game as well, the sevens game as well, how much money is going to go to that? So in terms of that, my argument with this whole thing is, yes, it is selling a part of SA Rugby, selling a part of history, but how long are you going to take before you're going to generate this money? What's your pros and cons? How's this money going to help us at grassroots? How's this money going to help us at getting job creation, getting more coaches involved, getting more, sports scientists involved, at grassroots level, helping with the women's game, helping with the sevens, maybe, looking at getting a few gyms in communities, at the rugby clubs and stuff like that, because that's all part of the game now. So how long, like I said, how long it's going to take. And also the other thing is in terms of the box, what is it going to do to them? We already know the box. It's very difficult because of the calendar that they do have. But obviously with an American investor, they're going to be expected to play a few games in the States as well, because that's what New Zealand also does it every year, and expand the brand. So how's that going to fit into their plans? When are they going to find that calendar? Are they going to do it similar to what they did with the Welsh game, beginning of the year, where there is a window before the test window, maybe looking at playing a team in America, something like that? That's something they're also going to have to look at, what strain is going to take on that, the commercial aspect. I mean, if you compare the box and the All Blacks, for example, when the All Blacks go on tour, the All Blacks do a hell of a lot of commercial work, a lot of commercial work. The box is going to expect it to do that as well. Now, because obviously guys are investing in money into the box. So all of that, comes in as all of those pros and cons. But for me now, my argument with this whole thing is, when are we going to generate this 1.2 billion, and get some of it into grassroots? How long is it going to take? Because obviously we know the URC and the Investi Cup, they do play out money. There is money coming in, but it's going to be a while before it comes in. But it's going to go to unions and franchises, like the Bulls and the Storms and the Sharks. I mean, it's not going to go to your borders. It's not going to go directly to your EP Kings and stuff like that, because that's areas of focus that we need to focus on in South Africa. So yeah, I'm all for it, but it's just a lot of work, a lot of pros and cons that comes into it. And, there's a lot of extra things that the box is going to have to do as a team and as players as well for this money.
Yeah, fair enough. Vickers, your thoughts on the injection? Jade, I think, mentioned EP Kings and Border. I mean, we both come from those particular regions. And I think back in our time, there was a lot of rugby within, especially a Border level, when Hertzmal was the Border coach. I mean, I think Border even made quarterfinals of Curry Cup back in those days. I mean, there was a strong rugby culture within the union itself at senior level. Gersmal went on to become Jake White's assistant coach in 2007 World Cup, etc. But I mean, there was a stronghold, and I mean, there was an injection of money as well. There were we could attract a few players. I mean, former Springbok Malotan is from there. There were the David Meidzers back in those days, but that's long gone now. We don't have those things anymore. I mean, do you think something like this can probably, to some degree, I don't know how much of an injection the small unions will get out of this 16 billion rand investment they could potentially get? I mean, how much of an impact could this have in those smaller regions like the borders and the eastern provinces of this world?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm probably gonna get hated for this, but I honestly don't think smaller unions will benefit from this. Okay, I'll tell you why. Now, if you get, let's say, the border region gets an injection of money, the question is, who is handling that money? That's where we have to go. Who is handling that money? Because at the end of the day, rugby now, even currently, both our Eastern Cape teams are struggling because of mishandled funds. Um, I was we're talking about Jade is talking about grassroots. So my brother's coaching the under 21 team of Border. They had to travel by bus from Thursday to play in Borland, 17 hours on the bus. Then they played a loss in the last minute because of fatigue. Now they have to bus back. So the question is, was this fixture a surprise fixture? Because it can't be a surprise fixture. This fixture was, people knew beginning of the year that there will be this team traveling to this province for this game. So my question still goes back to, who will be handling that money? Because someone within that is eating something, and that's where I feel it's not going to benefit, especially the smaller unions, because when Border was playing in the Currie Cup those days, winning and everything. I mean, I even played for Border in 2006, 2007. They we were flying and we were traveling to some places quite comfortably. But one thing's for sure, rugby was the main job. Rugby was the main thing within the province. Currently, it's not rugby. Currently, it's about how much can I pocket while I'm still here, while I still can. If it's not the board fighting each other, it's something else. I mean, we see this all the time within the smaller unions. And that's where the problem is. If I would suggest if this would be a deal to go to take, then you almost like need this money to be handled by the motherboard, and the unions need sort of like a request on request on certain things when they need things to be settled or need things to be paid, because the more the money they see in their bank accounts, it's crazy. Then you know what's going to happen. But okay, but anyway, I was actually wondering, is the 15th union Limpopo Blues?
It's not clear because they just
Yeah,
talk about
I don't know if they have voting rights. I don't think they have voting rights, right? But I think they are included in the junior structure. So Limpopo Blues Bulls do play in the B section and the 21 level or under 20 level. So I don't know if they have voting rights yet, because according to the constitution and stuff like that, but they are included in terms of in the junior levels and stuff. But I just want to add quickly on to Vuyo's story there. I mean, I just shared there. I mean, I've become accustomed to this stories at under 21 level or so because my dad's been involved for decades. And I mean, you've seen even like Greco's and stuff like that, where 2 weeks before a game at under 21 level or a 19 level, they don't even have kit. They don't even have tracksuits. They don't even have enough players. So these are all of the things, at junior level that we are facing in South Africa, but we really, really can't plaster over these cracks, guys, with the box being successful. We need to, that this money will help if it's handed in the right hands, like Rio said.
Yeah, no, fair. I mean, just listening to the border story of having to travel 17 hours before a game, it makes zero sense at this level, and especially where South Africa sits currently. The Springbok brand obviously is gaining global traction. And obviously, we need to make sure that at the bottom of that or underneath that Springbok brand, we do have the sort of logistical elements being fixed as well, so that everyone can enjoy this game to the greatest extent. And obviously, just have the small things done properly. I think for me, kit, travel, a place to stay, good nutrition. I mean, these are very important aspects to become a better rugby player. I mean, we've heard plenty of times how many times Sia had shared his story of his upbringing, etc. But we don't need that sort of thing happening in today's world, quote unquote. But obviously, there will be teething problems. But let's try and find common ground and obviously try and nullify and get rid of the small teething problems with a deal like this taking place. And I agree that maybe the smaller unions need to be rationed to some degree in how they spend the money and how obviously they receive the money as well. So maybe SARU or South African Rugby can manage those financial aspects of each union, so to make sure that things are done correctly. And if teams need to fly, those logistical elements are handled quite early. And obviously, the things like kit, Jade, you've mentioned, those things are handled way earlier before the season even starts, right? I mean, what are people doing during off season? These are small little things that you need to get going prior to the even season starting. Player sizes, players not knowing their size and getting over these oversized jerseys on the. It's not a good look, to be honest. I mean, I wish people could literally just pay attention to those small details to make ourselves obviously a better rugby nation, a better rugby union going forward with deals like this. But yeah, that brings us to an end to that particular topic. Jade, coming back to you, All Black squad was mentioned and All Blacks 15s. were mentioned over this week, and also there was news that Tamati Ellison has now become an official staff member under Razor's All Crusades. All Blacks. But yeah, your thoughts on the All Blacks and Tamati Ellison joining the Razor squad?
Okay, Timothy Ellison, I saw he was involved with the squad earlier this year as a skills, consultant and or skills coach, and more also helping with the attack play. And obviously, I mean, Razor's been comfortable with working with him at the Crusaders. I mean, he wasn't the worst rugby player, obviously, but I think he played a few games for the All Blacks as well. I think he was an All Black, but he was involved in the Crusader setup. So Razor felt comfortable with him. It doesn't look good, going and selecting, Tamati Ellison when he could have selected somebody else to be on his assistant. But obviously, if Razor selected somebody that is comfortable with him. We've seen Rassie Rasmus do this as well. We've seen a few other coaches do it as well. So I don't think maybe he was best in class, but I mean, I think maybe he was, what the coach wanted, something that he's comfortable with and something that he's used to working with. So yeah, I mean, let's see how it goes. Because obviously the attack, has been come under scrutiny, against the rush defense. So, but I mean, you have to also look at the progress that they did make since Leon McDonald's left. I mean, the attack looked much better. So maybe he had more influence in it. Maybe it was like a caretaker role he was doing, and we did see dividends with it on the attack, against the Boks and against Australia. But in terms of the All Black squad, I mean, no surprises, Scoop. I can't really think of any surprises in the squad. I mean, he gave guys like TJ Perenara and Sam Kane's going was for experience, and obviously big one is Cameron God coming back into the squad. There's no real surprises in that squad. I think it's been the tried and tested the whole year. He's continuing with that. It looks like you've got to really play out of your skin, and to get Razor's attention, and for him to drop guys. It looks like that. But I mean, I can see and understand why he selected a guy like TJ Perenara and Sam Kane, although we're all against it, but he needs experience against France and Italy and France, Ireland and England. I mean, that's a very, very difficult tour he's going at, so he needs that experience. Whether they'll play, I don't know. But I mean, if a guy like Ethan Blackadder doesn't make it, then obviously Sam Kane will start. That's what he's going at. But yeah, in terms of the All Black 15, that excites me. That's what excites me because I was looking at the NPC.
Of course, the All Blacks 15 excites you because Hoskins Sotutu is there.
Not just Hoskins Sotutu. I mean, if you look at it, if you watch the few of the NPC games the weekend, and you've seen that the likes of Billy Proctor and so far Moore and TJ, obviously them being All Black players, when they came down to NPC level, which is a step down, they lifted their game or they lifted the team. They were standouts. But now you look at the guys that also stood out in that game, and you look at a guy like, for example, Riley Higgins for Wellington. Every time he touched the ball, this whole season, something's happened. So you're looking at him, giving him a chance to play against Georgia, to play against Munster, for example, to see what he can do in that situation. It's the next step. And there's a lot of guys that excite me in this All Blacks 15 team that he selected. I mean, if you're looking at, for example, Riley Higgins, like I mentioned, Kini Naolo, Josh Jacob from Taranaki. Those guys, I mean, when will they get the opportunity, to represent the country? But they'll be thrown in the deep end, basically. But this is basically a step between Super Rugby and between international rugby, just so you can see, how they adjust to playing in different conditions. I think for me, New Zealand rugby's got a lot of things wrong recently, but the way they are trying to fill the gap with the African players leaving Super Rugby, for me, I think they're trying, and it's positive because they have the Maoris that played Japan in it was in June, July. Now they have this New Zealand 15 team touring Europe. In a few years' time, they have a tour. They're touring South Africa. A few times under 19s do tour South Africa as well. So it was in the off season as well. We've seen the Crusaders, and we're seeing more guys playing against Northern Hemisphere clubs like Munster, like Bath, and those guys. So they're trying to get, expose these guys to different conditions without, taking away from what they have in Super Rugby. So for me, it's no scoop. I don't know how you feel about it, because I mean, you also follow this closely, but I think they're doing a good job, in terms of getting these guys to play in different conditions.
Yeah, no, fair. I think that is a fair point on the work that's going on behind the scenes regarding the New Zealand rugby, and obviously trying to gain as much opportunity by getting the guys to get tested up north, different conditions. Yes, 100%. And I'm looking at that All Blacks 15 side. I mean, average age there is what, 23 years old, roughly, and there's not even one 30-year-old in that team actually, which is a good thing to or one, but which is like Eckland or something like that, and George Bauer are the only two old heads within that group, but which is nice to see, getting the youth to go play in different conditions. I was surprised that Josh Lord is playing for the XV and not the All Blacks, but let's see how he does, because I watched him for Taranaki yesterday in that quarterfinal. I don't know, man. I'm still not very convinced. Maybe Fabian Holland will overtake him. Who knows? But Vuyo, Jade spoke about how tough it is to crack it into Razor's team. Seeing Razor this first season and the first, how many games has he played now? 6, 7, roughly. And what are your thoughts on what you've seen from Razor? And obviously, why do you think he doesn't like to make too many changes into the current All Black setup?
I think I think at this point for him, it's about basically settling in the job first. I think that's one of the things that any coach wants when they take over. They want to settle on the job, understand what are the demands of the role, so that they're able to obviously make the best decisions going forward. So it will definitely be hard to crack if you because remember he's starting, so it will be definitely be hard to crack in his mind, because I'm pretty sure he has been playing this over and over again in his mind, especially now. He was announced literally even way before the World Cup that he's going to be coach. And he would have started following some guys, looking at what they can do, how he can, when he selects his squad, what he can bring in. I think at this point, with a guy like Hoskins Satutu, I think for him he's just unlucky. Obviously, I'm not sure why you wouldn't select a guy like, especially that you don't. I don't see RD as your out and out eight. But you obviously you get Sititi as well, who plays eight for his province, for his Chiefs. So I don't know. So I think the most important thing is as a coach, you wanna settle in the job. You wanna see what you're trying to do will with the players that you have will work. Then only you can probably start to make and see changes within your squad. So I this year, maybe no changes, maybe next year, no changes. And then maybe we'll start seeing changes 2026 going into South Africa for that inbound tour. And I think then we'll start to see what is his team going into 2027 World Cup.
No, that makes sense. Jade, any thoughts with what Vuyo has said? I know you
No,
want to
no,
see a lot of players coming into that setup, but obviously
yeah,
understanding
it's
the
just,
stability, etc. But
yeah,
yeah, your thoughts?
let's just even mention it, man. It's just, sometimes it's just frustrating if you look at a guy like, so two guys that I'll throw out there. And I'm a big Blue supporter. I'm a big fan of Dalton Papali, but you have to be straightforward and you have to, cut out to it. Look at him and Luke Jacobson, for example. They've been in the setup, when Steve Anton was still there. They've got both of them have their test cap. So first test cap in around about 2018, they about 2017 maybe, 18 year. And then obviously, they came through, and they've been in part of two World Cup cycles, but they still haven't made that jersey their own. They still question marks. You're still thinking, oh, can you select this guy? Is this guy really that good? At international level, when you are looking at your Olivons, you're looking at what a guy like, for example, like Ulrich Low, and those guys are doing it loose forward. They Kevin Fringe that took their chances. So for me, that is where I think there's a few guys there they can I've given them, they've been in the 2 cycles, 2 or 3 cycles, but they haven't made it. Yes, they're performing well in Super Rugby. Let's move on to the next one. Let's see how the next one adapts. Because when he did do that in Sakiti, it paid off. The same can be said with maybe a Severis and Talia, guys like that as well, because there is other guys knocking on the door. So I think if he can do that, and move on to the next one, and the next one takes his chance, then it's fine. Then I think you'll open up more opportunities for guys. But I think he's still clinging on to a few guys that for me has been 50-50. They've been hot in Super Rugby, but yeah, they really haven't taken the opportunity at Test match rugby.
Right. No, fair enough. Jake. The last thing I wanted to bring up, gents, is the obviously World Rugby. There was law variations. There was positivity from the stakeholders element regarding the new laws that they wanted to implement in terms of getting more game time or minutes on the field, and obviously things being a bit quicker than your usual or your previous way of play. Like, for example, when a try is scored, you get 90 seconds for a conversion, but now it was limited to 60 seconds. Also, not playing the 9 has been prohibited, etc., so that we can get a better flow of the game as well. But there's been multiple other positive variations within this particular aspect. But Vickers, with these new variations, there's always obviously resistance from a fan base perspective. But your thoughts in what World Rugby is trying to do in this regard, trying to speed up the game a bit, trying to get more minutes, and obviously trying to see if people can get their value for money with this particular variations that they could come into effect from the 1st of January. But your thoughts in what is happening, transpiring, and obviously some of these laws were used during the Rugby Championship. That's where the feedback was coming from.
Scoop, I think for me the most important is education. I think education is the biggest part when it comes to fan base. Not a lot of fans know when we say ball in play, what is ball in play? Because, for example, they see 80 minutes of rugby and they think, wow, what a good 80 minutes of rugby. But they don't know that ball in play was what 36 minutes, 37, which is averaging there. So now, by making them understand, when you're watching an 80-minute game, you're actually watching 30 minutes of rugby, 36 minutes of rugby. So this is why we want to increase the ball in play. Then they can mention obviously the law changes and everything. So I think that's where the most important thing is for me. It's understanding and educating your people, educating the people that love the game. Because you're entertaining. You guys are entertainment sport. So the more they understand why when you score a try you must kick a conversion within 60. The more they can understand why, when the ball is at the back of the scrum, let's use it so that we don't have another retake or something like a penalty. Like this, they must try to educate the people on why they're making these laws changes. Because for us as rugby coaches and rugby people involved in rugby, we understand and we've been frustrated with some of the things that have been in the past, like taking too long. Like imagine the teams kick quicker when they're chasing a game than when they're not when they're leading comfortably. So what we want is consistency, which is exactly that. We want to see uh, don't slow the game down just because now you're winning. If you're winning, if you beat me, but don't try and slow the game down because of that. So I think that there's a lot of education that's needed. Maybe this is where World Rugby needs to start by educating the fans on certain things. Why are you doing so? Why do you want more ball in play? Why do you want quicker conversions? Why must you take a line out within 15 seconds of you kicking for touch? Like things like that. I think that's the most important for me. It's education. Otherwise, the law itself, I'm happy with. I'm happy with the trials, and I've seen the trials. and I think it could be good for rugby going forward.
Fair, 100%. Jade?
I think we spoke about this before in terms of the law, but I mean, I think we also, hit the nail on the head there in terms of ball in play. I mean, if you look at the British Lions, Daughters of Africa, those 3 tests, I mean, how long they took, to get scrum started, how many times the water, the water boys and the guys carrying water, Rassi included, ran onto the field to give a message, how many stop starts were there. I mean, it really, really, really didn't. The series was a good series, but I mean, that was really negative, in terms of how long they took you to get games started, how long, how many time was wasted actually. I mean, I think there was one test match there, if I'm not mistaken, and I think the game normally starts at 5 in South Africa, and it goes until around about, say, 5 to 10 to 7 for the latest, but that game went until 7. The way it took so long was stop, start, stop, start. So we don't want things like that, understand that is what we don't want in our game. The other thing is, Scoop, I mean, if you do look at where these laws come from, everybody's saying, yeah, down south they're making these laws, but these laws has been trialed, they've been tested. There's been multiple inputs, people that had input on these laws. It's not Paddy O'Brien or Lyndon Bray that made these laws, It's not John Cowan from the Breakdown that made these laws. I mean, Scoop, I know I want you to end it off, just to say how they come about making these laws. I mean, for me, for one, the few laws that I didn't like, the one-stop more, because I think it's very difficult to have it neglect. I would rather add it when the referee does score more over and the backline, can step forward. Then you have your one-stop, something like that would work better. But other than that, then I'm fine with all of these laws. I mean, the same people that's complaining of a 20-minute red card and spoiling the game are the same people yesterday that said David Creel got a soft red card. So those are part of the game, Those are all part of the game. So, yeah. But yeah, Scoop, I just want you to just elaborate as we end this off where and how they do look at making these changes and where does it come from? What's the panel that do make these changes?
Yeah, no, the panels, your stakeholders, South Africa is involved. New Zealand Rugby, Australian Rugby, Rugby Union in England is involved. The French are involved. And obviously there's multiple discussions from around the table going forward on how to improve the game. And obviously all these people come to an agreement on how to move the game forward. And also sometimes they even involve ex-coaches, right? For example, or even current coaches in those particular discussions, because those people have the experience or the expertise with regards to what they've seen over the period of coaching at the highest level. So those are some of the people that are involved in these discussions, and obviously those are the people that actually give the go ahead. And obviously, World Rugby also does not just say, guys, we're just going to put these laws and so be it. No, that's why there's variation. So that's why they want to try them first and use particular tournaments to see what the outcome is. And then if they tick the right boxes in those measurables, then going forward, then everyone is happy. The stakeholders are happy, which are the people I mentioned earlier. And then from then onwards, we move forward with the laws. And when they decide that the laws will be implemented, it's either during September, because the northern season starts around August, September, July, and because the northern season starts in September, or they'll use a January for a kickoff because the southern hemisphere teams will start their seasons during that period. So yeah, in terms of how the decisions are made, those are the particular people that are involved, and that's how they move forward with these particular things. But yeah, so guys, from my side, I think that's about it regarding this particular episode. I don't know if you have any final thoughts, Jade. Any final thoughts from your side as well? Then we are closing it off.
Just from my side, guys, we didn't cover the Bulls because it was just Ospreys, please.
Yeah, no, I thought I wanted to touch on the Bulls, but I was like, the Bulls were just too dominant in that particular game.
Yeah, to say you don't want to watch, you don't want to cover National Geographic, so you don't want to talk about penguins, but it's fine. Anyway, guys.
Ooh, heavy. Anyway, who your Lions, Dragons? Who you calling?
Yeah, I think I'll give it to the Lions.
Really?
I think look, the Dragons have always been a team that was there for the taking for South African teams. So I think I'll definitely give it to the Lions here.
All right, fair enough. Jade?
Oh, I don't know. It's going to be close. The Dragons played like they played last week. I think the Lions can be find it difficult, but I think the Lions, if they do up the tempo in the game, they should run away with it.
All right, no, fair enough. That brings us to an end of our segment today, guys. Thank you very much for joining and listening in. Vickers, thank you very much for joining. Jade, thank you very much for joining. See you guys next week, same time, same place. Rugby Scoop Podcast. Share it with your friends. Talk about it at home. Share it with your families, and obviously listen to us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Cheers, guys. Have a wonderful Sunday and enjoy the rest of the week. Goodbye.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everyone.